Poppy Playtime's new game, Project Playtime, finally got a new release date after a massive delay. However, fans are actually mad at the developers once again for this move, with some saying they aren't even interested in playing the game at all anymore. So Project Playtime is a game I'm sure you've heard of at this point, and for good reasons. It's an upcoming free-to-play ASIM where a bunch of employees try to run from a monster while also trying to complete tasks and eventually escape. Simple enough. However, if you've watched my channel recently, you may remember the developers ran a Poppy Playtime ARG, where after digging through tons of files and secrets, we would eventually uncover that this new game, Project Playtime, was going to be releasing on the 6th of December 2022 with a new character named Boxy Boo, and the hype couldn't be much higher. Now, as I've talked about in other videos, this game's announcement was very controversial with its comparisons to other games like Dead by Daylight, and of course their questionable design with the Boxy Boo monster. However, these were mostly unpopular opinions, and everybody was incredibly excited for this brand new game to finally release. And to be more specific, the original release date for the game was supposed to be at 9 a.m. Central Time on December 6th, according to their FAQ page inside of their Discord. And to this point, things seem to be going pretty good for the developers, as the hype for Project Playtime was only building, and everybody was preparing to finally play the game. However, when the day of December 6th finally came and Project Playtime was supposed to release, things started to very quickly go wrong for the developers. Because by the time morning came, they randomly wiped any mention of there being a set release time off their Discord server. And they would instead release a new statement that said, "We're not sure yet what time today Project Playtime will go live, but we'll let everyone know when we're ready as soon as we can." This announcement was released just an hour before the game was supposed to launch at 9, which is when the alarms really started to go off in people's heads. Why did they have to delay the game, and how long was it going to be delayed for? Well, after a few hours of silence, the developers would actually make another statement on their official Twitter account going into more depth, saying, "We're currently working on putting some finishing touches on bug fixes before we release Project Playtime to the world. We still expect Project Playtime to release today," reassuring us that they were still on the right track, while also giving us a brand new screenshot showing some of the different in-game cosmetics that were expected to be released when the game eventually launched. It's also worth noting that around this time, the developers would give some content creators access to a Google Drive file as more compensation that inside included all of the in-game cosmetics coming to Project Playtime, and even some pre-release gameplay as a nice secret bonus while we waited for the game's launch supposedly later in the day. However, as the hours grew on, people grew impatient, and after a little while, a streamer who I will leave anonymous ended up live streaming themselves leaking all of the files given to the content creators, including every item shop skin, all the gameplay footage, and even the mechanics of the characters in the game, which obviously was a very controversial move by the creator for obvious reasons, since they literally leaked a bunch of confidential information and even shared the Google Drive file to all of their viewers. However, it seemed like it was an accident to at least some degree, so it is what it is. I made a whole video about the leaks here in case you were curious and wanted to see all of them. Anyway, I think it's safe to say that at this point, fans were super angry. It was the end of the day and there was still no game to be seen, while people began to leak secret parts of the game to the world before it was supposed to even ever come out. And unfortunately, things don't end there at all, because eventually December 6th, the original date, passed. And the developers unfortunately released a statement to the public that reads, "Hey everyone, we have seen everybody eagerly awaiting Project Playtime's release today. We're so sorry, we've been working nonstop and have done everything in our power to release today, but we're out of time." And they then go on to say that the reason for this delay was because of server backend issues. Or in other words, there was a suddenly discovered bug in the server system that completely made the game unplayable. Because of course, if the servers aren't working properly in a multiplayer game, then it's entirely impossible to play. And for whatever reason, this massive oversight slipped through the cracks until the final moments, apparently. So therefore, they told us the game was going to be under a permanent delay until they figured things out. And let's just say that the reception to this was overwhelmingly negative and aggressive. If you still have to patch out bugs on launch day, maybe don't reveal a release date / time for your game yet, said Johnny Blocks. And if you literally just look anywhere on the internet, it's just filled with everybody complaining about the state of the game, including the Poppy Playtime Discord itself, where many people were criticizing the game and its really poor time management for what I would say are some pretty valid reasons at that. You see, the developers at times were struggling to communicate what was going on, which to an extent is fine because they were probably spending most of their time trying to actually fix the game. But to be fair to the fans, attempting to set a release date for a game before it's done and then just hope nothing goes wrong in the next couple days is pretty unreasonably risky. Especially since when they ran into trouble, they didn't decide to delay the game a few days or anything, but rather just remove any traces of a release time and just hope that they could fix the bugs before anybody noticed anything was wrong, which of course, as we know, wouldn't end up being the case. A moderator on the Poppy Playtime server said it best, saying, "I think what happened is that since they do playtests every weekend, they found a major bug the weekend before the release date. They tried to fix it before the release date or on the day of release, but they couldn't. And since the bug was major, they couldn't release the game with the bugs at all, which is why the game got put on such a major delay so randomly. However, nothing more could really be done, and we would just have to wait until the next day for some news to come out. Except as the days passed, no news really ever did come out. The only update we got after this would be a couple days later where the devs would reword the same thing about them fixing bugs and giving us a new screenshot, which is nice, but people were getting really impatient at this point, especially since screenshots would come out of the developers claiming they were 99% done in private messages just for nothing to end up coming out. It even got to the point where people were entirely losing hope in the developers, saying things like, "Guys, is it just me who ain't hyped anymore? Like, they haven't given any new updates since Thursday. And not to be rude, but I'm not even hyped about this game since it's taking long to release." Showing that people were not only getting tired of waiting for this game, but they were actually turning against the developers and decided to stop waiting entirely after the delays got too long. Luckily though, as you may already know, just yesterday, after a 4-day delay, the developers would finally come out and actually give us some incredibly good news, saying, "We are super excited to announce that Project Playtime will officially launch on December 12th. Once the game releases, the whole team will be all hands on deck fixing any and all bugs that pop up once the game is live. There will be a bug report button in-game to report issues to the programmers." So apparently the game is actually supposed to finally release after a long 6-day delay. However, I think it's safe to say that the launch for Project Playtime has been an overall complete mess. The developers were criticized for often giving misleading info, saying that the game was still on the right track, and then suddenly just cutting off communication for days at a time. However, if you wanted to know my thoughts on this controversy, I have to admit, as a big fan of these games, seeing this launch be so messy was really sad to watch. There were a lot of YouTubers I talked to who were planning on streaming this game, including myself, and most of them were entirely left in the dark when the developers just didn't really tell us much of anything. But I will also admit though, as with anything Poppy Playtime related, the drama got completely blown out of proportion, and seeing the game literally trend on Twitter for hours with people just ripping on it was very much childish and unnecessary, especially since it was very clear that the developers were trying their best to get the game out as soon as possible. But at the end of the day, the game is supposed to finally drop sometime this Monday, so all is well that ends well. I'll make sure to, of course, stream it here the second it drops. I'll be sitting on this computer all day until it comes out, assuming, of course, it doesn't get delayed once again, so subscribe for that, and peace.